Good evening, everyone. If we could take our seats, please. Good evening. Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the regular council meeting of April the 9th to order. And as we begin, I would like to take a moment to recognize the South people and their long history and their connection to their lands, as well as their government. Council, we do have an agenda here today. Typically, we move item number 7.1, the RCMP report, to immediately following the delegations. So I'd look for a motion to approve that reflects that. Second. Moved by Councillor Reay and seconded by Councillor Parkinson. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, so we're moving straight into our delegations this evening. We do have one, item 4.1, Mr. Roland Alcock with Climate Accountability. And I understand we have... Go ahead, Councillor Reay.
Yes, Your Worship. I know this is a delegation, but I also see that there are letters here that are penned by other municipalities, and there are letters to Chevron, and I have family that's employed by Chevron, so I am going to excuse myself.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Reay. And welcome, Mr. Alcock, please. If you could please come to the microphone there and turn it on just at the base there. And we do have 5 minutes set aside for the delegation, and you'll see that time countdown on the timer in front of you. So welcome, thank you.
Thank you, Council, for this opportunity. My name is Roland Alcock. I have an extensive scientific training and hold a BSc and PhD degrees in chemistry from the UK. I'm a resident of Souk for 11 years, and I'm here this evening with a delegation of fellow volunteers from the local group of the Dogwood Initiative. My topic today is climate accountability letters, and we are here with a request. We are here because we recognise the District of Souk already understands the vital importance of environmental health to its citizens and to our community future. In February 2015, Souk passed the Suzuki Blue Dot Declaration of our community's right to a healthy environment. And in regard to climate change, in 2008, the District of Souk signed the British Columbia Climate Action Charter. From this document, I quote, "Governments urgently need to implement effective measures to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and anticipate and prepare for climate change impacts," unquote. The District is to be applauded for all these past efforts. Now it is 2018 and climate change is indeed here with a vengeance. Last year we saw the single largest rainfall event ever recorded in the US, with Hurricane Harvey bringing 50 inches of rain to Houston. To put that in context, that is the equivalent of Souk's entire annual rainfall falling in 5 days. Scientists know that higher ocean temperatures enable higher humidity and more energy to be absorbed into these storm systems. Ocean heat is the engine of the physical processes that drive these hurricanes. Here in BC, we have not and cannot escape the impacts of climate change, and new record temperatures and heat waves now continuously hit southern Vancouver Island. In late June 2015, 60 daily records were broken across BC. On May 2nd, 2016, many new records were set, with Vancouver breaking the old record by an incredible 5 degrees. In 2017, all-time daily records were broken, often by as much as 2 or 3 degrees in many places in BC, including Victoria and Souk, during the months of both June and later in August. A new record high for Victoria was set just this March 12th, 2018. As a result of these long, hot, dry seasons, last year we had the largest forest fire season ever recorded in BC. The provincial state of emergency lasted a record 10 weeks, and the cost of the fire season was $564 million. There were fires here too, on Mount Quimper and on the Souk Road. Even if these were human caused, the fire risk is obviously growing due to the dry conditions, even here on the damp coast, where we might have once thought we were immune to fires. The conversation we now need to have as a community and as a society is who will pay. Who will pay the social costs of climate change, such as expanded and more extensive fire prevention and firefighting capability? Who will pay for shoring up and protecting the properties on Billings Spit? Who will pay for repairing and raising Whitman Spit to face rising sea levels and protect our harbour? Who will pay for protecting and enhancing our water supply, something we may now take for granted, but which will increasingly be threatened in the future? In short, who will pay for building community resiliency to climate change? Do communities and individual taxpayers shoulder 100% of these costs? We believe the answer is no. A paper published in a scientific journal calculates that just 20 fossil fuel companies are responsible for about 30% of the anthropogenic carbon dioxide now in the atmosphere. The best way to begin the conversation, then, is to challenge the assumption that taxpayers must pay the full cost of preparing for and repairing from climate change-triggered events. Each community needs to send an official climate accountability letter to each of these 20 fossil fuel companies, which discusses the specific harms endemic to that community, firmly and publicly states that we expect them to accept responsibility for those harms, and state that we expect them to pay their share of the costs. On Vancouver Island, the municipalities of Saanich, View, Royan and the Highlands have already done this. Examples of these letters are in your package. This conversation has started in real earnest across North America, and we ask the District of Sault to add its voice. In closing, remember the event in Sault Basin in June of 2016 when it turned a beautiful tropical-looking azure blue? I asked an 86-year-old lifetime resident of Sault about this phenomenon, and he said he had never seen anything like it. It was apparently due to a specific species of calciferous algae blooming in the water, responding to a unique combination of temperature, nutrients, and high light levels, not to be confused with the common types of algae blooms that occur in freshwater and affect swimmers. Although very beautiful and harmless, this was still a sinister warning of the climate changes that are already underway. Here is a picture. No, that is not the Bahamas. That is an arbutus tree right there in the foreground. And as a stark, even shocking contrast, underneath is a picture I took last year near Sheringham Light, showing the surreal early morning sunrise during that August heat wave when the deep smoke haze from the interior forest fires blanketed our coast. As I took this at 7 a.m. in my T-shirt in the record warmth, hardly a breath of wind, not only did it not feel like Sault any longer, it did not feel like this planet. Again, beautiful, but yet another warning of the serious changes happening to our communities and to our planet. The full hammer blow of dealing with the cost of climate change must not fall solely on taxpayers, and in particular our children and grandchildren. We therefore urgently request that Council make a motion to send a climate accountability letter, similar to the suggested template we include in your package, to each of the fossil fuel companies in the list we also included. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alcock, for the presentation and for sharing some of the background as well as the letters that other municipalities had sent. It seems straightforward to me. As you know, we all pay more in taxes each year to take appropriate steps for our community, and of course the fuel tax is often used as a source of additional revenue for such, but of course that just puts it back on the users of such, whether it's to fund transit. We know fuel tax is going up. And it goes right back onto our residents, actually, who end up paying more for something. So in this case, what I'm hearing you say, Mr. Alcock, is to put it to those that are actually producing the emissions so that they begin to contribute for the impact that we're feeling in our community. And that's the sort of every letter that we see is reflecting a little, some different areas of their communities, their official community plans and the like. So it's a fairly straightforward template. Questions or comments from members of council? Any questions or comments from Mr. Alcock? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Parkinson.
So I would like to move that the council send a climate accountability letter to the corporations listed on the sheet.
Second.
Okay, so that's moved by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Loggins. And what myself and staff can do is sort of take the template letter and make it more suited to our local specific needs. Questions on the motion from anyone? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Alcock. And can we leave the clapping, take the clapping outside, please? If we could please have someone return Councillor Reay to chambers, please. Okay, next I would like to welcome our staff sergeant forward, please. Oh, he went to get carried. Welcome, Staff Sergeant.
Thanks, Your Worship. Councillors. That's an important presentation to follow, and it's interesting to think about how climate change is going to affect law enforcement, which I haven't read anything about yet. This is, I guess, a quarterly report, and more importantly, I would like to seek what limited time we do have as just a little bit of input, or maybe get yourself, Your Worship, thinking about our annual performance planning and councillors, and it's not completed yet, so if there was any follow-up, I always able to discuss it after this meeting. So file-wise, for the detachment, right now we're sitting at 1,435 calls for service in 2018. That compares to 1,337 as of this day last year in 2017. So we are trending up. I expect this to continue, and I'm not so sure if we're going to hit 6,000 files like we did in 2016, which is a record for Souk detachment, but I would assume that if we don't do it this year, that's coming probably the year after. We have been setting records, and set a record in 2017 for the amount of prisoners, which shows that probably the degree of seriousness of the files investigations that we're taking on, as well as the substance abuse in this community, is probably increasing. And probably has more to do with a little spike in the population than anything. Just a brief comment on some important community policing initiatives that we're taking on and pushing. Number one is Block Watch. We presently have 6 Block Watch programs up and running within the district of Souk. And I think that possibly everybody here is familiar with Block Watch. It's very easy to understand. It just has to do with organizing people in a geographical area, getting them to know each other, organizing against crime, trying to harden their area towards victimization, and getting them to liaise and call the police when there's anything suspicious. It's an effective program. And we have 4 more in the works. Those are all in East Souk, and probably been accelerated by a little bit of a spike in crime, which we experienced the last few months. I'm happy to say, though, that the 2 main suspects that we were looking at for those are now in custody. Speed Watch. We have a Speed Watch in Citizens on Patrol group in Souk, which is very active and very well run. We have 16 volunteers, and this month all the Citizens on Patrol shifts are full, which is, I'm not sure if that's the first time that has happened, but it shows that it's a very healthy program, and we really appreciate the support we get from those people. Our DARE program, we had some difficulties this year. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if any of you remember Corporal Scott Hilderly, who served in the detachment and then went on to actually a DARE full-time spot. He's retired, but he has come back, and he's doing it on a volunteer basis right now, but we're trying to look for a way to compensate him. He's covering 2 of the schools, with Constable Haldane and Constable Heidemann covering 2 other ones. Victim services. This is should be probably a little bit of a concerning area for you. We have 1 position which has been vacant since July. This isn't a nice to have service. This is a mandated by law service, and it's kind of unusual the way that victim services runs here in Souk. It's what's called an RCMP based victim services program. So the person who's hired actually works in our office. They have a security clearance, and they work very closely with our members, providing service and referrals to the people who are victimized within this community. Last July, our victim services worker took another job, and we had a change of contract holder. So we don't actually pay the person. We provide them office space and other things. And there's a an agency holds the contract for victim services. Originally, when I moved here, that was the Souk Residents in Need, and we had a great relationship with them, but eventually they wanted to move the contract, and we also wanted to get benefits for the person. The worker had no benefits. Originally it was Barb Benson, and we wanted to get a benefit package for our new worker. So the Souk Transition House Society took the contract for the victim services person, and which we very much appreciated. They had a benefit package. But I would say, just to cut this short, with respect to the hiring, there were some problems, there were some philosophical disagreements, and it's led to quite a delay in the hiring of a person who we've now named. It's a person named Jacqueline Cooch, who's very highly qualified, and we're happy that we've agreed on the hiring of that person. There's been a lot of bumps in the road, and we're hoping that somehow we can straighten out this relationship in the future, but that's the main reason for that delay, and it is entirely unfortunate. As for the staffing levels at the detachment, we are currently up to strength, with the exception of the new sergeant, who will start on duty the week of May the 1st. We have one member transferring out, and I think that he has just sold his house, and that's Constable Jamie Robinson, going to Sydney Detachment. One of our initiatives, which has to do with our annual performance planning, is impaired driving, and that's something that we are making huge progress in. And I don't have the comparables, but they would pale to these statistics quite significantly. Last year we had 2 members. If you get 12 impaired charges, you make what's called Team Alexa and get recognition from the Lieutenant Governor. We had 2 members on that last year. I don't think the year before we had anybody. I expect to far eclipse that this year. And the statistics, just from January, we have issued 14 90-day immediate roadside prohibitions. We've investigated 33 of those weren't issued. 10 3-day immediate roadside prohibitions. We've run 8 roadblocks, and we have 7 criminal charges. So, and we have one person who already at this point in the year has exceeded the qualifications for Team Alexa, and others closing in on it. We plan to pardon the pun, keep the gas pedal down on that program, and get the message out that this is a great place to come and enjoy our pubs and restaurants, but not the place to drive impaired. So moving on, maybe I'll just take a quick break in case there's any questions on those topics, and I just have one more, and then I will be done.
Just like to thank your members for their work on the impaired driving. While it's great that they've received the award, it's an unfortunate that they have an award because people are still drinking and driving. So
I agree.
I appreciate the work that they're doing. It's just with all of the conversations about it that it's still something that is actively being worked on. I'll leave a couple of my questions for after. Councillor Parkinson, then Berger, please.
Through your worship, I was going to ask about the Speed Watch program, and I was wondering how many, I know that Citizens on Patrol has a good number. I was wondering how Speed Watch is doing. I haven't seen them out recently.
There's 16 in both groups, and both groups meet together. And some of them are members of both groups. Oh. I'm not sure exactly what the number is. The Citizens on Patrol, I believe, has more members and maybe a little bit more active. But at Speed Watch, they're still doing all right, and they were really valuable in going to a few areas where we'd had complaints to try and sort out exactly what was going on there. So we do use them. We do send them to certain areas, and I can look into that for you and get back to you.
Thank you.
But yeah, there has been a month or two when they haven't been out there very much.
We've been having discussions at the council table about the the sign that we have for speeders or how fast people are going, and to have the trailer to put it in different areas. And there was discussion about, does it stay with the District of Souk or does it go to the RCMP? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure I understand the question. What is it you're wondering?
So we have the sign.
Yes.
The district does not want to go out and put up the signs everywhere. There was talk about giving the sign to the RCMP so that you can manage the sign and put it out throughout the community.
And what does the sign say exactly?
It's just for the speed that people are going.
Oh, okay. So it's one of
One of the
those
speed readers.
Yeah, I'm not sure. You're wondering if we would go and put it out in certain spots. Yeah, I don't think that's something we'd quite get involved in, but I'd be willing to take a look at it. Yeah, the Speed Watch people might be willing to help you with that, so we might be able to facilitate it. But,
Right.
yeah, but on that same topic, Your Worship, we are doing a lot more traffic enforcement, and that has to do with just direction the members are getting. Also, the fact that we're fully staffed, and they're invaluable. When we get speed complaints, sometimes we'll send them out and say, "Is there a problem here?
Right.
Is this a valid complaint?" And then we'll target that area. But there's certain areas that we've been issuing a lot of violation tickets and just having contacts with people and educating them that there's a high frequency of accidents here, and you're going to see us here more often. I think it's been quite effective.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Berger. Then Loggins, then Pearson.
Yes, thank you. Through you, just a quick question. You said that the victim services person that's been vacant since July, I'm happy that you found a new person. You also stated that we have a unique situation, so I'm just wondering, is there areas that we can help sort of remedy how that works? If it's a mandated position, I feel your frustration on how hard it was to get someone in that position, so is there anything that we as a district can do? Like, how does that work? I guess I'm just wondering what you said it was sort of a contract, and SUC is unique in how we do our contracts. So is there a way that it can be better?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Berger, I didn't, if I said it, I didn't mean to say that SUC is unique with respect to this. This is how most of these positions are operated throughout the province, and in most cases it works quite well. In this case, it's not, so we're working on it. It probably caused about a 6-month delay here, and I don't think that I don't think we've heard the end of it with respect to how the process was run by this society. So we're going to look into that a little more. But we did come to an agreement on someone who's very well qualified. Like I said, I don't see any role for council here, but I appreciate your generous offer. And just to clarify right now, what we're waiting on is just the last part of an RCMP security clearance. So the delay right now is ours.
Okay, Councillor Loggins, then Pearson.
Thank you. Thank you for your report. It's always nice to have you in chambers. My question is around the Block Watch program. That was one of the suggestions put forward by Safe Routes to School in terms of having them along the walking routes for elementary school and middle school students. Do we have any currently on certain routes to school?
We don't, and my understanding is the Block Watch program has been discontinued. And I think that it had to do with just the problematic aspects of putting a sign that can be easily replicated in your window saying this is a safe place, right? It's just a problematic thing for us to endorse now, although we did at the onset. I don't know if there's a substitute for that, but I can look into that.
Thank you.
Councillor Pearson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Staff Sergeant MacArthur, through the chair. It's always interesting to have your presentations and things, so I have a sort of a general question, and I'd like your opinion on it. I noticed that in news lately, without failure, I turned it on, there seems to be an increased ability for law enforcement to capture people because of the proliferation of video cameras and the affordability and the setups. So is that helping you or assisting you in a general sense, kind of? So.
It certainly does. It also creates a bit of a headache for running around obtaining these things, storage of the data. Sometimes there's judicial authorizations to write to get the access to this information, video footage and whatnot. But no, it's helping us. We are having conversations even late one shift on the weekend about facial recognition programs and whatnot, but we're using it a lot. And we have a lot of businesses that are really accommodating with turning over their video here. So, it's huge.
Yeah, that's good. And my comment is that in Vancouver, there was a very violent attack over, I think, within the last 4 or 5 days, and that person is actually in custody as a result of one of those video images right now. So it's, just wondering if it's kind of, in a general sense, it's improving sometimes for you.
I think it is, yeah. Yeah, it comes with its issues, that's for sure, but it's a good thing.
Councillor Casper?
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to take you up on that offer of contacting Speedwatch in regard to looking at the feasibility of them taking over the sign. It would save us roughly $15,000 on the purchase of a special trailer to support a 60-pound sign. And my understanding was Speedwatch's current equipment, they can only have it mounted facing one direction at a time, and this would give them the ability to go across the street and have another freestanding Speedwatch or, an indicator on the opposite side of the street, and, that would probably do more for them in just warning both directions of traffic. So, in my mind, it would be great, to pursue that as in a timely way, because we spent 45 minutes discussing the merits of buying a $15,000 trailer. And, I think we've all got more valuable things to deal with, but it did take that much time. So anyway, I look forward to anything you could bring forward. Thanks.
Just on that particular sign, I think what would be helpful is, does Speedwatch volunteers have volunteers that would be able to use the sign? Like, we haven't seen them out there, and part of it, I thought, was because it's having volunteers available at certain times of day. So that would be during school hours when people are speeding in school zones, or at other times. So I think if I don't want to hand over a piece of equipment that then collects dust in your office, because there's a volunteer shortage of when it's needed. So I think it's something that we could have a future conversation on when you have a moment, just to give us some input on the volunteer base. The question that I wanted to ask is, a while ago we had talked a bit about the Vancouver Island Major Crime Unit that Sue had been a part of before, and how the formula on how each municipality would contribute was under review by the province, and then everything sort of just went on hold. And there hasn't been an update from, for a while now. But in recent months, the mayors of the Capital Regional District have set up a regional integrated police working group, and they're looking for some dates. A lot of this came out of the core area municipalities, but all of us have been invited to participate. So they're trying to coordinate dates right now. And I'm just wondering if your detachment has had any conversations with other detachments in the area about the integration of services at all?
No, that would be probably something that would be done by our Island District officer, and not at the detachment level.
Okay.
But rolling back to your question about the Vancouver Island Integrated Major Crime Unit, I'm still waiting for a word on our inquiries to them. And initially when I came here, we weren't a part of that group, as you know.
That's right, yeah.
Which puts us at risk if there was something significant here. Unfortunately, the murder that we did have here wasn't as expensive as some could have run us. And a couple of years ago, as you recall. Mm-hmm. And at that time, it was quite a simple process for us to, or it was more simple than it is now, for us to join the unit. It was either cash or they wanted a position. We're not in a position to give them a position, pardon the repetition, here, but maybe we would be in a position to give them cash. Now that doesn't exist anymore. So I've been in contact with Inspector Dave Hall, who runs that unit, and asked him, when you can, give us the information on how we would become a part of that. And I think that's just in flux right now. So we're still in the same position that we were before, that if there is a homicide in Souk, that we're paying the bill for that.
Yeah, no, that's right. I've just noticed that some of the folks that are coordinating seem to be the same people that I spoke with about the VIMQ matters, and now with this one. And then also this came up just with, I can't remember what it's called, it's the integrated service where there was some intelligence that was shared across borders that we are no longer a part of because I can't remember the
Regional
acronym.
Crime Unit?
That's it, yeah.
The Regional
That's
Crime
one.
Unit disbanded as
That's
a
right.
couple of municipal agencies pulled out of it.
Yeah. So that's where I'm wondering now, and that's sort of where my interest is finding out where both of those matters stand. But it looks like they're sorting out the dates. I got a doodle poll with 12 different dates, so they're trying to line everybody up. So if I hear
Okay.
any more, then I'll be sure to let you know about that.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. I think you had more to share with us.
Yeah, just briefly, maybe I'll introduce what we have basically pursued as our priorities. And, of course, our activities aren't exclusive to these priorities. It's more or less what direction we're pushing our people in when they have some discretionary time to get out and about in the community. And first priority was improving road safety, targeting impaired drivers. And the second one was to improve our relationships within the First Nation communities. I think that we actually do enjoy very good relations with our First Nations communities. I hope they would agree, but we're looking to improve them and improve the service we offer. Within Souk, we're looking to improve our crime reduction program. That would be another one of our priorities, and a reduction of the number of property offenses. Number 4 was domestic violence, educating people on domestic violence within the community and trying to drive the occurrence of it down, as well as better hook up with the resources available for those who are subject to it, and also improving our communication with our internal and external partners. So those have been our previous 5 annual performance planning initiatives that we took on and did have some success with, and I'm seeking input on how you think those should change and what you think the priorities should be for Souk detachment. It's a lot to probably ask you to think about and give me feedback, but
Yes.
I'm easy to contact on email or meet for a coffee or anything. I'm more than happy to hear if you think we should stay with those, if there's something we should add to them. And those are just brief descriptions of the titles of the initiatives, and they become more robust as you break them down into different categories.
Oh, that's great.
So,
Thank you, Councillor Reay.
Yes, thank you for your presentation, and through your worship to Staff Sergeant MacArthur. Every year, as we're asked about this question, every year I still say the same thing, and that, not to take away from your priorities, but I'm always concerned about speeding in our playground zones. And always have complained about the speeding down Sun River Way, watching people doing 70 and 80 through a 30, often parents with children in their vehicles. I'm not sure what the answer is. I don't know if it's education, but I am troubled by the fact that people just don't seem to respect the playground zones. And the other one is on Souk River Road. People fly through there where the soccer field is. So anyhow, just it's that time of the year, so make my same comment as I do every year. Thank you.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Reay, thanks for those comments. And I was just, speaking of Souk River Road, I was just talking with a concerned citizen who's in the audience tonight about Souk River Road, so you will see us out there more often. And it's really nice if you could, this is one area we use Speedwatch into to try and get to narrow down the times so we can utilize our resources a little bit better in those zones. So maybe if you could follow up with an email to me, I'd be more than happy to help you, because, if there's anywhere we want to enforce the speed, it would be playground zones.
If I can, just as a follow-up, I always think that once word gets out that policing are watching playground zones, I don't know that we have to do every playground zone all the time, but if word gets out into the community of Souk that you are rotating through the different playground zones, My guess is eventually people will start to slow down, because as long as it's happening, and it doesn't have to be every day, as long as the community knows that it's happening, I would think that it would start to decline just by the nature of not wanting a speeding ticket in a playground zone. I also, just for the record, if somebody is doing 61 in a 30 playground zone, what would be the cost of that ticket?
I'm not sure what that would be. 40 is, of course, a barrier where you can lose your vehicle and it's excessive speeding, and 31, it's in the area of $276, something like that.
Thank you.
I didn't issue a lot of tickets myself, but I should know, reviewing quite a few.
No, and I apologize for putting you on the spot. Sometimes people just don't realize how high the fine is.
Yeah, exactly. And Your Worship, again, through to Councillor Reay, it'd be wrong to think that we're not already in those playground zones. I can review our violation tickets, but we do issue, I do see playground zone tickets coming through. Yep.
Whenever you have a moment, if you could send us an updated, we used to kind of get a listing that shows the number of calls and what the calls are related to, whether the speed and which zone and area, and then if it's theft under, theft over, cell phone use while driving, that sort of thing. I forget what it's the quarterly
your
report.
monthly mayor's report that used to come to you.
Yeah.
Okay, it's funny. I was just wondering about that last night. We had a turnover of staff, and unfortunately, the person in that position has been off for a little while. But I think we'll get back on track. And I wasn't, to be honest, sure how useful you thought that document was. But if you like it, we'll certainly get her going again.
Well, I found it interesting just because you can see year over year, and then when things change with texting becoming not, a contravention, then is it seen reflected? Because I see people texting and driving frequently, and then of course the speeding, and then of course the other conversation is in which areas are people speeding the most within our community, and what can a municipality do for that other than have more signage, but. Yeah, I thought I liked the stats. I thought it was interesting, but I don't know.
Would you like us to
I would like to
go back the last 18 months? We didn't send them to you, or can we just start from...
Well, I think just
Right.
maybe rolling forward,
Yeah.
as up to date as it can be. I think it'll just be interesting, and I always thought that as we add to the complement, then likely the number of calls would increase, or the number of files would increase because there's more people, more in the detachment. Hopefully stopping or catching people, whether it's speeding or crime or anything. So some would argue that I think there's an expectation that the crime rate would go down with more policing, but there's an argument too that the crime rate might actually go up with more policing because there's more people actively catching people.
Yeah, I believe you're right about that. Yeah.
So you would agree with me that...
You'll see that. If we could sustain our staffing level for any given period of time, you would see that, Your Worship.
We'll see the crime rate go up, but maybe over time we might see the severity index go in a better way.
I think the crime severity index would probably stay stable because we don't impact on that with proactive work. Only marginally, probably.
Okay.
I think assaults, serious assaults, these kind of things, tend to have an independent existence. But yeah, the file count certainly would go up significantly.
Okay, and then the other thing, of course, that would be of interest in that report is should cannabis be a legalized substance, and with the changes to the Motor Vehicle Act, I'm not sure if it's the Motor Vehicle Act, but the other one for impaired driving, then would that then add a new category in our report, and would we then start to see any activity there or not? I know that you're already dealing with people smoking and driving, but there is a concern that the legalization would have more impaired users on the roads. But then if you're catching them, we would see that reflected and it would be properly reported.
I don't know, just very briefly, Your Worship, I don't know how popular my opinion was, and you heard Chief Mounts and my presentation about the impact, what we expected the impact to be. And I'm kind of the opinion that legalization, we're just changing the method of distribution. Almost any 14-year-old kid can go down prior to us having dispensaries here and obtain it. And so it's a little more obtainable right now. Are we going to see some big spike? I'm interested to see what happens, actually, but I don't expect it. But we are well situated, and we're trying to improve our ability to investigate impaired driving by marijuana. Yep.
Thank you very much. So I think what we can do is take the priorities in mind, and council can have some time to reflect on those and be in touch with your office should they desire further information. Excellent. Good for everyone. Thank you very much for your time here today.
Thanks for having me.
And many thanks to everyone in the detachment as well.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'll pass it on.
Great. Okay. So, council, we're moving on in the agenda to our public question and comment period. I'd like to note that this particular section is for any item on tonight's agenda. However, the budget has its own public input section built into it. If I'm not mistaken, to our corporate staff, the budget has its own particular public input section in it, so then we can use this section for all other items except for the budget.
I think it would probably be most appropriate to do it during at the bylaw, because I think that there are some a little bit of additional information that staff have to offer if council or the public have any comments on that additional information.
Right, so that's where the budget, when we get, which is the next item, after we have the staff report, it has its specifics public input section. So I would like to reserve this public question comment period to anything else on the agenda. So that would be any feedback from the RCMP report, correspondence, speculation tax could be heard now, and then we'll leave the other comments on the budget specific to that budget section. Hopefully I haven't confused everyone with what I just said. So at this time, please come forward. We just require your name and address for the record. Please let us know which item it is, and there's 2 minutes per speaker on the timer, please. Thank you.
Hi, Britt Santowski, 2206 Church Road. Just regarding the police report, you guys turned down the opportunity to have about 18 months worth of feedback. And if you're going to be looking for patterns over time, that information, if it is easily accessible, I think it'd be a great thing for you guys to have.
Yeah, it's a good point. I'll follow up and see how much of an ordeal it would be to get that. Thank you, Ms. Santowski. Other speakers this evening? Sir, if you could please turn on the microphone. Yep, thank you.
Oliver Katz, 16995 Norden Road. I'm just wondering how the community or you guys are looking at the speculation tax. There's a number of municipalities who are trying to opt out. The impact here that we're seeing in the real estate fraternity is we've got a lot of people who live here part-time, who spend a lot of money in our community. They're well heeled in some respects, and they can go out to restaurants 2, 3, 4 times a week. They keep the economy going, and they're expressing concerns, and we're seeing some people who are talking about leaving the community. And so I'm just wondering what we're thinking here.
So this is the first time that council will meet to deliberate and discuss this matter?
Yeah.
So up until then, we've likely all seen different media comments, may have talked to other council colleagues from other area, and just what we see out in the press. So that's sort of what, and with some correspondence that has come in from residents within our community, that's where I've asked that it be on the agenda so we can talk about it tonight.
Right.
So this will be the first. We've not talked about it as a collective yet.
Right. Okay. But you'll have something going forward, do you think?
Potentially.
Some direction.
It's in the agenda tonight, so at that time, council can choose to send a letter, we can leave it as is, we can advocate with others at an upcoming conference, so that'll be the will of council when we get to that point.
Okay. So you'll be chatting about it now?
Well, after we have to clear the budget discussion, and then it's the next item on the agenda.
Right.
Yeah, or next, a couple after correspondence. Other speakers this evening on tonight's agenda? Anything but the budget?
Jeff Bateman, 7083 Briarwood Place. I'm referring to page 19 of the correspondence from the Capital Regional District regarding the BC Energy Step Code. And it's really, I don't believe anything in this council chamber that you've not discussed the Step Code to this point. I'm not sure what's happening at the staff level either, but it's good to see that the CRD continues to serve as a conduit to municipalities in the CRD, that there are ongoing local government peer networks, and that there is government support and best practices, counseling and advice available to the District of Sauk on this matter. I was a little disturbed to see the City Green Solutions report of a workshop it held for elected officials and senior staff in the CRD back on November 10th, 2017. It looked like a really wonderful session. Unfortunately, no one from the District of Sauk attended, and that's regrettable. So I hope that this is seen as a significant issue. Moving our new builds to increasingly energy efficient models is critical. And that's it. Good night.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bateman. Just to respond to your question about it, we have been really down and now currently without planning staff who would naturally bring this forward for us, likely as we progress with the OCP. So now that we have some staff joining our complement of other staff in the very near future, it'll likely be a more appropriate time to have that conversation. And sometimes when we get invitations, it just doesn't work with what the other matters that we have on the go. I think everyone does their best to attend what they can. Okay, other speakers from the audience this evening? Any item except for the budget? Okay, thank you very much, everyone. So we'll just move into the agenda then, into item 6.1, and this is our 5-year financial plan bylaw. We did have first and second reading of the bylaw at the special meeting on Thursday, April the 5th. That did have some questions and concerns raised by members of council at that time. So I know that our staff have been working to address those. So I'll just turn this over to our CAO, Mr. Blackhall, and perhaps you can give us an update on where things are at. The one thing, actually, sorry, Mr. Blackhall, before I do that, as some of you may know, we had a number of deliberations and discussions about the CRD arts program or arts service, where there was we had a vote that didn't pass, it was reconsidered, and then it did pass. However, we have since heard from the CRD that Sauk is unable to join this service until 2019. So the board would have to make an amendment to their particular bylaw and go out to referral participating municipalities. It would be a minimum of up to 3 months for that to occur. When they were here in January 22nd at the Committee of the Whole, that wasn't fully explained to us, so I think I had thought that Sauk might have had a prorated amount for this year, or that it would be done a little bit different, and that's when we started discussing it as part of the budget and where it would fit. So it wasn't until after the fact that was notified that that isn't the case. So subsequently, at our last special meeting, we passed a motion then that it would be our intent to join starting 2019, and then that way the board could go through its process this year. Should the new council or next council decide not to join, then the CRD would simply do a budget amendment. They passed their budget in the fall with an amendment in the new year, so that would be what would be the case. So at that point, it would just go from there. One thing that I thought of then is because it does not come out of our property taxes, but it's a CRD. The other thing is it's a CRD requisition. It doesn't come out of municipal taxes, but there still is only one taxpayer paying for this, that then we should drop our contingency amount to offset it. Just because where it's not coming out of our budget, it's coming from the CRD requisition to the person paying the bill. It's the same in the end. So it would just be, otherwise you're paying more. I don't know if I'm saying that in a way that makes sense, but really ours should decrease to offset an increase. You're increasing this over here, so then this should decrease a bit to make it neutral, because that was how we adjusted our contingencies. We adjusted our contingencies in that amount so there would be no tax impact. So it just makes sense to me that our budget should decrease slightly because the other one is increasing. That would just be for what I would think going forward. It's the same person in the end that has to pay the bill. It's not multiple checks. Anyway, I'll just pass this over to Mr. Blackhall at Council. Think about that, and we'll carry on. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the bylaw is on page 13 through to page 16. This is the same bylaw that Council then would have seen in draft form on Thursday when we had first and second reading. The detailed plan that makes up the bylaw totals is not included in this package. It's the same detailed plan that was included at first and second reading, so it hasn't been included. I did hand out to Council a breakout of the FTEs by department along with the salary and benefits costs. So that's it.
Okay. Maybe I'll turn over to our fire chief. There were concerns raised by members of council about the long-term apparatus replacement and whether or not refurbishment could be an option. While we did have a motion to this effect, I think it would just, because you weren't here, it would be helpful to hear your perspective again on refurbishing trucks as opposed to purchasing trucks out new. The other one that came up with concerns of the additional firefighter hire. Last year on November the 27th, Council did in fact receive a report from you in an open meeting that outlined how the two positions last year were filled and how the budget is contemplating a third to be added this year. So I know that you have presented that, but it would be helpful just to have that restated as it was another area of concern. The one thing that, as I left the meeting and thought about, was we agreed with the International Association of Firefighters on the agreement that we have in place that we would hire 2 additional firefighters over and above. So now when I think back on this, we still have to fulfill that obligation because we had our assistant chief retire. So the 2 positions that were hired were one new and one to fill a position that had been vacant for quite some time, which leaves us short and required to hire one more firefighter to fulfill our agreement with the IAFF. So concerns about to not fill that position when we had bargained in good faith that we would hire 2 more people just leaves me concerned as a municipality that we are not fulfilling our obligations through that process when we did agree to hire 2 additional. So that actually means 3 because 1 was vacant, 2 more positions needed. We've only done 2, we're short 1. And I think that's what was articulated at the meeting in November, which I regretfully missed that meeting, but I did see the report and read the minutes because it was all open. So I'll turn it over to the chief. I know that you might have connected with our CAO about the meeting and just any highlights that you'd like to share from not being here. But I see Mr. Blacko.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just before the chief starts, the other additional firefighter position is actually for 2019, not 2018. So council sees that in that report, but the chief will speak to that anyway.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and good evening, Council. I watched the video on Saturday and was quite amazed at what I saw from not being in the meeting on Thursday. I think it's important that I touch on a few key items to kind of keep things in perspective. My apologies for not being there, but I was on an important training session with our recruits and volunteers up in Otter Point because Thursday night is an important training night with the fire department. I think one of the first things from what I witnessed there is just a reminder to Council that we are your trusted advisors and our subject matter experts and staff. And we've gone through some recent consulting work to kind of remind that that's an important key factor when making informed decisions. And the reason I bring this up is as I have to give Councillor Berger some credit for diving deeper into what refurbishment is all about. Our apparatus replacement plan has been in hands for several weeks, and the concept of refurbishment coming out at the 11th hour was a little bit worrisome. And myself not being there to kind of rebuttal a couple things is important that I speak up now. I've done some research and I'm quite familiar with what can and cannot be done with the fire underwriter survey. The District of Summerland was brought up, and I spoke with the chief in quite length about what they did with their refurbished unit. It's important to note that a refurbished unit with that department had nothing to do with any of the apparatus that benefits the underwriters. It's for a rescue unit on a 1996 Freightliner chassis. And the cost of doing it was about $165,000 on a unit that already had 100,000 K on it. And it was just to rebuild the rear end of it. And it's something that doesn't apply to their underwriter's grading, and it's something that they would look at doing instead of reinvesting the complete cost in something that doesn't benefit their grading system. I looked at the application forms that are required for extending apparatus and had a lengthy conversation with the fire underwriter survey as well. Refurbishment on a reserve and second line unit is only where we see this being granted. Refurbishment requires a process to apply, and it still cannot be accepted unless there's certain criteria met with the fire underwriter survey. This involves rigorous testing, proof of reliability, annual service test reports and submissions, proof of pump testing. Have not received many of them, and it's very uncommon from what the underwriter survey was telling me that, in fact, they've probably only seen 2 on water supply type units in the whole existence of when they've been up and running. Older units is something that they have a big concern with, and the things that they look at when apparatus get above 15 years in age is inadequate braking systems, the ability to slow down and accelerate properly, the structural weakness on chassis due to load bearing and or overloading, since older units really have to be applied for an overweight permit, and excessive pump wear that you can't really see on the outside of a unit. We have done some refurbishment actually in our own department, and I was querying the crew what was done with our past water tender. There was a process done with it in 2005 that was deferred, same in 2010 and 2014 when they were asking for refurbishment on the unit. The fire owner say refurbishment is just really buying some time, but if you do push apparatus beyond the 15 years, you start seeing a reduction in your fire protection classification system. And even if you do refurbish units beyond 20 years on your second line units, there's an impact that the grading system is reduced as well, or you still don't have the credits for the unit. Refurbishment really does not apply to the rated units. So in our fleet here, it's not really applicable to something that we can do in our initial 5-year plan here with what we see required, with an engine to be replaced. There's mention of how BC Hydro does refurbishment. The fire underwriter survey is really all about the ability to move water. And Hydro is not an emergency type vehicle, so refurbishing a unit in Hydro that is fixing doors or, replacing the light or rebuilding something is not something that is really applicable to what we do in emergency services. If we do refurbish units, and speaking with other chief officers, there's significant downtime when they do the work. It can be 6 to 12 months as well. And downtime is a key impact factor, and an application for refurbishment with the underwriter survey would take into consideration a temporary grading change. I think what bothered me the most about looking at the video on Saturday was sort of the 11th hour kind of alarmist perspective when we had a plan kind of in place for people to review. Coming into my office to ask questions, I'm happy to bring council in and actually give a tour of our actual fleet in both Station 1 and Station 2. My volunteers had some comments about it as well, and I think it's important for council to be mindful of the impact from their perspective. I think we tend to forget the value that the volunteers are providing as far as a low-cost labor force. All they're asking for is to make sure that when they do respond and come into the station, that they do have good, safe equipment to work with, and to look at a drastic motion to not allow the procurement of any future fire apparatus was something that was very troublesome to our volunteers. There was a comment regarding, side-swiping council. I think that was just offside. Myself, I've been nothing but open and honest about the negotiations and the results of the contract. I really need to get myself to the position where I have support in the actual department. I'm a unique fire chief. I'm taking on building and bylaw as well, and that area is growing. And the fact that I'm the only exempt employee in the community safety is a concern, and for us to look at good management and good staffing practices, the dialogue and exchange about getting another firefighter in place to make sure that we can get to the position where the deputy is exempt and comes out of the union. And that's where all our planning and discussions were with respect to having another firefighter in a plan. We don't wake up in the morning to undermine the system. All us firefighters as well are actual taxpayers. I've moved to this community. I've invested a lot in this community. I've bought a home in this community, and my kids go to school in this community as well. So I think that's something to be mindful as well. The 3 union workers carried a considerable workload. They did the work of 6 employees in 2016. The one position of deputy was vacant for 18 months. They did not create the overtime problem, and it's something that we've actually worked on resolving, and I think we're still actually recovering from that. The RCMP staff sergeant talked about discretionary time. I'm trying to get there with the 2 new hires. I'm not there yet to get to the position where we can actually do company inspections. We're not there yet. I don't have that discretionary time yet because we're still playing catch up, from that downtime. It's important to remember that the volunteer firefighters made the Superior Tanker Shuttle Service accreditation possible. As we're thinking about the budget, they're very, very appreciative of coming into action to make sure that this actual water tender was done in advance of the actual budget approval. Those are one of the most dangerous apparatus to drive, and the volunteers do most of the driving of that apparatus. And for them knowing that they have a good unit, a safe unit that's up to current safety standards that older units don't have is something that they're very happy about. There's a considerable amount of insurance savings to new residents in the area that are getting the proper water flows that the Fire Underwriter Survey recognizes, and it's important to be mindful that the volunteers made this possible. Our apparatus plan was really there to show the health and well-being of our fleet, and the volunteers and myself feel that some of the motions that were happening on Thursday without me being there seemed to be kind of a means of punishment when we're actually just showing the actual well-being of our fleet. The current budget in 2017 that we had there is not much different than what was shown in this 2018 budget, besides bringing in about $207,000 of revenue from wildfire work that our one engine did. Some of the small unit, capital planning that we've done in the next couple of years is from that revenue to bring in a safer vehicle, especially the squad unit that is a very unsafe vehicle, which has gone through some refurbishment as well too, because it was involved in an accident, what the members was telling me today. In 2017, our brush truck was down for 4 actual weeks, and this was due to parts availability. It's a 2004 chassis, and we found out through difficult means of research that a simple type of brake switch, there was only 2 parts available for it in all of North America. We had to track it down. We found it in Quebec, and we bought the only 2 parts that are available. So that unit was actually down for a considerable amount of time, and that's why we have reserve units in our fleet. It's one thing out of that, and what we're learning with that particular manufacturer is what you saw in the RFP for the new water tender, was it to be on an international chassis. Because we're learning that there's more reliability in a unit like this, and this chassis is in other industries such as forestry, and it's one of the main type of units that is getting a better reputation than Freightliner. So that's just an example of kind of the prudent, good decision-making I'm seeing from my staff to make sure that we eliminate some downtime that impacts us. So I just want to, remind Council that, I was really hired based upon my merit, experience, reputation, a number of factors. I went through a pretty grueling process to actually be hired here, And I think the trust needs to be mutual. And for decisions to be kind of made without me being in attendance, kind of on the 11th hour, was very kind of troublesome and worrisome for me. And I was quite upset when I watched the actual video. And I just want to make you clear that I'm doing my best here to be open and honest with council. I do have some comments about the duty officer shifts, because there was some questions that were coming from the members of the public about that. So everyone is paid the same when they do the duty officer shifts. All our actual fire officers are obligated to do some duty officer shifts. I do them myself as a backup, but I'm the only one that doesn't get a small type of stipend for doing a duty officer shift, being the exempt fire chief. Each officer is expected to do about 20 shifts a year, and 100% of the career officers will do them when they have an option to do them, and only 50% of our actual volunteers are actual fire officers, and they're all the lieutenants. The payment for doing 12 hours of work for a duty officer is $99.92. So that equates to about $8.30. And that's what the volunteers actually get for staying up all night. And these career members get the same thing as well. You can see why our actual Volunteer Firefighter Association is looking at a true paid-on-call system that's consistent with other fire departments in British Columbia. We do have a duty crew shift as well, and that equates to about $5.30 an hour. So I just want to kind of summarize that, we're doing what we can to be reasonable. And when we talk about staffing and staffing increases and the 10-minute response time in the past, it's just about reasonable growth. We are taxpayers as well, and we want to see this organization and the district succeed as well. And in order to move forward, I think we just have to kind of hit a bit of a reset button here and make sure that we're actually investing in the fire department, not putting a panic button and not looking at investing at all in our fleet. That is more troublesome than anything. I'm welcome to take any more questions right now.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief, for taking the time to watch the video and just to hear some of the concerns that we may have so we can move forward. I'll turn this over to Council. Looking for some questions, comments, motions, anything. Councillor Loggins, then Reay.
Oh, thank you, Chief Mount, for the presentation. Thanks for calling us out. It does alarm me as well because it shows a major disrespect between council and staff, and that's embarrassing and it is alarming. It is also alarming that we make motions on the fly without information. The fact that no one came to you and asked before making such a motion or waited until you're here to present is unacceptable, and that's why I voted against the motion. But I do want you to know that I trust you and I appreciate you and your team. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Loggins. Councillor Reay, then Berger.
No, I'm sorry, Your Worship. I actually found what I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Berger, then.
Yes, thank you. There's quite a bit to address here. It was my motion at the last meeting, which you did see, and I made the motion, and if you watch the tape, I made the motion because I'm looking for all options as well regarding the community purse. At no time have I ever, in my years being at this table, not supported any person that puts a uniform on every morning. I come from a very long line of service-oriented people, and I have the utmost respect for fire department, police, and our military. What I was looking for is other options. I had read an article, and I brought this up on March 26th, though I don't believe it was the 11th hour. I'd been, the last few meetings, been asking about the cost of refurbishment, what that looks like, would it work in our situation. I believe I even said, please tell me if I'm wrong and it doesn't work here in Souk. And if it doesn't work here in Souk, then I'm okay with that. I just was looking for more options. We're looking at a substantial amount of increase, and if any of our vehicles can be refurbished or rebuilt, then I'd like us to entertain that as an option. If I'm hearing now that none of them will qualify for reclassification, then that's the answer I need. For me, it's the community purse and the budget. There's a hefty amount going forward in our budget. It totals a 9.3% increase over the 5-year plan. It's $656,000 coming solely from taxes, 1.9 in total. One of those years is a 7% tax increase, 7.8% tax increase. That means no disrespect to any person that puts a uniform on. None of this is personal. It's all about the community purse and what our community can take. So for me, it's There's no personal attachment. Again, I come from an extremely long line of service people. So there's no disrespect, and it's something I have brought up since the first day of our budget deliberations. So again, I absolutely support the firefighters and what they do for our community. My husband was one of them. I just am looking for options, budgetary-wise. I noticed other communities have done it, so I was looking to see if it works in Soup. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Berger. Councillor Casper?
Yes, and I'm the one who made the motion to delay the hiring of a firefighter until we receive the report from the Fire Underwriters Service, and those are the conditions. I also said that I'm not opposed to hiring additional firefighters, so I want to make that abundantly clear both to the chief and to any members of the public. And perhaps that might have been missed in the review of the webcast, but that was my motive, and had nothing to do with not filling a position at any time. So.
Okay, so do any other members of council have any other questions about the budget as a whole for staff at this time? Comment, Councillor Reay?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and again, thanks to all the staff for working on this budget. This budget is the first budget I've probably in my 7 years that I haven't been actively involved in, and that's because I've returned to full-time work and no longer work in the community or on the island. I have to say I am a little shocked to see it at 2.79. It seems to be a bit of a heavier increase, and I'll be supporting the budget. But I just hope that I've always tried to have some fiscal responsibility in terms of the tax increase. So I had hoped that we would be below 2.5 this year, and that's. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reay. Just for clarity, so Mr. Blackhall, it's at 2.79%, is that correct?
Correct, Your Worship. That's where we ended up with all the recent changes, like increasing the line painting, et cetera.
So for the line painting, there was a few other things that we increased slightly here and there. However, this is down from what was 5.5%, I believe.
That's correct, Your Worship. The current approved 2017 to 2021 plan for the year 2018 has 5.5% tax increase. And other municipalities I've spoken to, we're right in the ballpark right now. So.
Okay, so I think that's an important to Councillor Reay's. There was a significant amount of work done by staff to bring it down from the 5.5 to the 2.79, while also recognizing the needs for service and improvements, particularly in the infrastructure. So I think that really speaks to the hard work that everyone has put forward. So thank you for that. Anything else from members of council? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Casper.
Yeah, and just through you to staff, it's fair to note that we didn't spend the full tax increase that was implemented last year at over roughly 5.5%. And that went into the general operating surplus, so that money was then rolled back into this budget, correct? And if we hadn't have done that, we would have been faced with a 5% increase, correct? Okay, thank you.
That's a very good point, Councillor Casper. Okay, so Councillor Loggins, and then I'd like to go to the public, please. Go ahead. You're good? Okay. So there is a public input section provided here, so I'd like to welcome any members forward to speak on the proposed 5-year financial plan bylaw to please come forward. We are in a regular meeting, so there is a 2-minute time allocation on this, and this is specific, but you can come back, even though you've been with us this whole time, Mr. McIntyre. But we do still require your name and address for the record.
Cam McIntyre, 2012 Penang Road, Souk, BC. I'd just like to end the opening of tonight's council meeting. Once we got on the agenda, you did speak to the 34.5 for the CRD Arts Council, how it had ended up going nowhere. My interest in that is derived out of the vote process that took place to allow the motion to pass. I noted Councillor Parkinson recused herself due to vested interest in the arts community in Souk. The problem I have was Councillor Loggins openly spoke of deriving 50% of her income from the arts. And I find that difficult if a person does that to actually stand in and vote on the motion. And I'm just wondering, through you, Madam Mayor, is that acceptable practice?
I'll let the councillor speak to that. It is typically up to each member of council to determine when and if a conflict of interest or bias persists. We saw Councillor Reay step out after giving her reasons earlier today, but I'll let the councillor explain. Go ahead.
Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. I am an artist, but I don't apply for arts grants. It is very specific to that.
I'm sure people you know might.
I'm sure people you might know might as well, and same with everyone on council.
But I have no ability to vote on this expenditure. That's my concern.
I'm not on any committees that require my vote to participate in that.
Let the councillor explain herself,
I do not hold a conflict of interest on that vote. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Madam Mayor. It's a situation that I'd be very guarded about in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McIntyre. Can we just complete? Okay.
Cannabis Canavan, 6220 Calvert Road. Retired Assistant Fire Chief, Municipality of Saanich. Retired President of Local 967 International Association of Firefighters. And past member of the Souk Fire Commission. Spokesman. Through the chair, Madam Mayor, I would like to ask a question of Chief Mounts. He mentioned that that there was some mention of undermining the system. I'd like to know who he's talking about.
Okay,
those were his words you just said. He was very upset about the comments he heard of people, whether it's council or maybe members of the public, undermining the system. I'd like to know who he's talking about.
Over to the chief, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. To the member of public, the context that I was using there, undermining, would be referring to myself. I was referring to myself. I don't wake up with the goal to undermine the system. I want to actually support the actual district. So sometimes there's a perception that staff are not doing their job and they are purposely trying to undermine the system. That is what I'm trying to get the point across, is that we're trying to do our best with the resources that we have and the time that we have to deal with the workload that we have.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. I would ask for a little bit of latitude on time here tonight. I've attended every meeting up until now, and we're talking about a tremendous amount of money that's going through on behalf of the fire department budget. Some of the questions were answered and some weren't. And I'd like to carry on with my discussion here so council could make a firm decision on what they're going to vote on. And I'm going to run past the 2 minutes. I think I'm down to 30 seconds now. And I've got 3 or 4 pertinent questions to ask this council and the members here tonight as to how they're going to go and vote. And I would ask for a little latitude here.
Okay, so I'll let council make that motion. Are you prepared to extend the time allotment to say 4 minutes for a fresh 4 minutes for Mr. Ebbs Canavan? Moved by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Berger. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Loggins?
I would prefer that we do 2 minutes for an intro, and then if anyone else wants to speak, that we hear them for 2 minutes, and we can always invite him back for a longer discussion at that point. I'm open to having a longer one after we've heard from anyone else who wants to speak as well.
Okay, I see your point, but I just think it's to save time on the shuffling of chairs and the time to get up to speed. If Mr. Ebbs Canavan can just go that time, I think that would be reasonable. Okay. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Is carried unanimously. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ebbs Canavan. Go ahead.
Thank you. The reason that so many of these questions have been asked through myself and other people on the committee is that when the hiring of the chief took place, I was phoned by the professional firefighters and phone from the volunteers as to what took place in the fire chief being hired.
I don't know if we should discuss anything regarding staff hirings in this meeting. I'd prefer that be an in-camera discussion.
And this is why we have the concern of what we have in right here. With the report that was given out to council earlier and what we've heard here in respect to monies that haven't been accounted for, and it's carrying on right now.
Excuse me, Your Worship, this is totally out of hand, in my opinion. There are no monies being unaccounted for. If the member of the public would like to join me downstairs all week for a visit with KPMG, I'm more than happy to entertain.
Can I finish my question, please?
Well, I think
it's a forum for...
I asked a question earlier at the last meetings where the line for overtime was, and it went on for 2 meetings until finally we found it. And what I'm asking for right here is something that is important to the district. Monies that were paid that could reflect back on the fire department budget to different people that were brought in to negotiate against the firefighters. And I'd like to know, and the public would like to know, how much monies were those people paid?
Okay,
and
so that is a question that we can
Yes, well, that's what I'm trying to get to, madam.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Ramsey was brought in, Mr. Cameron, Gabriel Joseph was brought back to assist with the bargaining. And in all fairness to Mr. Blackhall came in at the very end and settled the agreement, but that doesn't, the charge that was paid to Ramsey from Port Moody, Chief Cameron and Marina Holdings, Extra, and Gabriel Joseph, nowhere does it show where that money's been paid.
Okay, so I think...
And I don't think they did it for nothing. So
No.
that's one thing.
But let me answer the question.
Fine, go ahead.
So my understanding is in an open meeting, we had contracts that were approved. There were, I think, in the amount of $10,000, and then we found out that more time, so we ensured each time that it came forward in a public setting. I'm not aware of any funds paid to Mr. Joseph. He did work on this agreement when he was an employee of the district. And there was agreements with Mr. Ramsey and Mr. Cameron, but I'm not sure what those amounts total, but they would have come from the legal. They came through the legal account. So they would be in whatever our actuals, we have a budget to actuals report. There's a legal amount. I'm sure we can find the breakdown. I don't remember the total of the... where we're at with that particular budget. I think we were...
I believe, sorry, Your Worship, I believe it was 70,000 roughly for the year that was spent in 2017.
70,000
total legal.
In total legal?
Yes.
And those 2 contracts would have been part of that
yes,
total
there was
legal?
a council resolution that determined that would be the best spot for those invoices because typically negotiating costs are part of that budget.
And Councillor Reay can answer that?
No, actually, with all respect to the member of the public, a point of order. What we are deliberating tonight at this particular time is the 5-year financial plan. And I understand that you have questions about what happened in 2017, but this is what's on the table at this time. So I don't feel comfortable talking about 2017 when the matters about the 3rd reading.
I appreciate the answer from Councillor Reay.
Thank you. We will also be receiving the audited financial statements at a public meeting when they're available.
Yes, we would like to see that. And the reason is that I'll bring it up at another meeting because that money should have been spent locally right here and let the people that we have here, the expertise here, handle the contract rather than bring it out from the outside. That was my point. And it's nowhere in the budget here. It shows, I think, for the upcoming year, $1,000 for firefighters put aside for medical consulting. As you're well aware of what took place in Saskatchewan over the last week with this horrific accident with the young hockey players in the bus in their community. If that type of accident was to happen here with a school bus coming out and hit a logging truck down here, the same thing would reflect on the community, the police, the workers that went there from the fire department, and you would be faced with workers that wouldn't be able to come to work. They would be off on sick leave and that. And it's very important more and more that the right now that we reflect more money for our paid staff, our firefighters, to take care of these things, not when the accident happens, but 1 or 2 times throughout the year, is to get all our employees in, tell them and show them and let them know what can happen. Because when it does happen, and it's happened to me on quite a few occasions, it's a real traumatic experience, and you're going to have firefighters and police officers that won't attend the meeting and that are so upset, and that results in them being off on sick time for an extended period of time, which reflects back to a tremendous amount of overtime for the people in the district to look after them, because that's your responsibility to look after them. And nowhere in the budget it shows at $1,000. Well, $1,000 won't do anything for them. So that's something that should be looked at in this budget to reflect a little bit more and have it laid out. And the question would be directed to Chief Mount. He's in charge of it, and I think that he would understand where I'm coming from.
I think it was a few years ago that council actually put in some sort of wellness insurance or something of that nature, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember what it's called. Maybe to our CEO or to the chief. I think it was something relatively in the last few years.
Thank you, Your Worship. To the member of public, from what I recall, that was an additional type of rider, so the volunteers could have the same benefits with their employee assistance program that the actual career members get as well. So this is the counseling component that is part of our critical incident stress management program. So it kind of starts at the roots for all members, because our volunteers are impacted equally as much as the career members as well when it comes to some of the fatal incidents that we've had recently where we've engaged that process. So our plan has that component of it as another tier of supporting the actual firefighters. So it starts right from our own internal program, working with the Archipelago Group, then to the counseling sessions through the employee assistance program. So I believe that's what that $1,000 was for, was bringing that component in for the volunteers as well.
And that's a rider, and that's why the amount is not that significant. It's a rider to an existing policy that we already have in place.
That's correct. It gives the volunteers the same access.
Okay.
So the volunteers are going to be covered under that particular clause? That's good. That's what I was concerned about.
Okay.
Thank you. And I just have to make one point to the chief, that he mentioned that the inspections are a huge part of what takes place in the municipality. Inspections are probably one of your most important things with the duties that are on duty. And I fully believe that from the commission, when we had the commission, was sitting there, from working in a paid department with the other paid departments in town, it doesn't cost anything at all to take the truck out on the lunchtime, after lunch, and do public inspections in the truck with a sign on it that says public building inspections. You're out in the public eye. They say, this is really a good thing. And it is a good thing. And because your inspections is a whole thing of training that the firefighters here don't do on a regular basis, due to the fact that they've had this in the back of their mind for a long time, that they have never had enough people. Well, that's one way to get around it, and inspections are one of your most important things that you can do in the municipality, not only for yourself, for the firefighters and the volunteers, but for the public also. That concludes my talk for this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you for the extra time, Mayor and Council.
All right, thank you. And you may recall, or there was a notice of motion put forward that yourself and Mr. McIntyre and the other commission member could present, I think, or maybe it was just the two remaining could present, and then committee of the whole likely in May when we get that scheduled. So there may be some other comments that you might hear, but we look forward to that. Okay, other members of the public, please, on tonight's budget. Thank you.
Gale Hall, 2517 Souk River Road. I'm looking at that thing up there. It says council give third reading. So what is the point in any of us speaking to the budget? It's all been done, obviously, or you wouldn't be giving it third reading. Now, we were promised a number of times that there would be this so-called time that we were supposed to get through the statutes. Community charter says there shall be the opportunity for the public. Sitting here after council has done all their talk, and with 2 minutes, that's not fair, and it's not following statute. So there's no point in me trying to say anything. I will probably take this up with somebody that has got some brains. Where I'll find one, I don't know.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hall, for that observation. I would like to add that at every special meeting, as we received every page of departmental budget discussions, there was time for members of the public to speak on every single item, every single budget before council made any motions whatsoever. I think we had 6 special meetings outside of a regular meeting where we worked our way through this, and each time we didn't just leave the public input at the beginning, but we did it page by page, department by department through. So this is where we're at now. And
but your idea of this is that you decide all these things, and then the public gets 2 minutes to sit here and say, well, gee, we think that's nice. But there are a lot of other issues that you don't discuss that people would bring forward if they had an opportunity to have a proper opportunity to walk around like we used to have and speak to various people, different councillors, and not sit in this stupid chair with 2 minutes to say what we have to say because you have decided that certain things are right. But they don't fit with me, and they don't fit with people who come, and they don't want to sit in this chair. They're nervous, but they will come if they can walk around and speak to councillors, speak to staff, and put their ideas forward. We didn't have that opportunity at all, and we haven't for the past, 3 years or something.
so there's been 2 Talktober events at the community hall with all of staff, all the displays, plenty of opportunity to walk through. No
But it wasn't the
presentation.
budget, was it?
But it was the startup and leading to that.
So how many times have I stood in the community hall and asked when the $765,000 from the so-called park on Souk River Road, when would that money be put back into the park fund? And it's still not there, and I think it's probably 6 or 7 years now that I've been trying to get that money put back. And these are the kinds of things that the public has got inside them that they can't discuss it because you folks have all got your little ideas. I think this set of agendas that I got from the 3rd, the 5th, and the 9th is the strangest mess I've ever seen. We've got a regular council meeting on Thursday, April the 5th. How do you have a regular council meeting on the 5th of April? It's a Thursday. This is the kind of stuff that upsets people like me, and we've got one chance to sit here for 2 minutes and say, gee, we agree with you. No. I hope that come October.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hall. Other members of the public, please, on tonight's budget, proposed budget.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. Just a comment.
Sorry, we do require your name and address
I
for the record.
apologize.
Thank you.
Loretta Deutscher, 7026 Wright Road. Thank you, Mayor and Councillor, for this opportunity. First of all, I would like to thank our financial officer and every other title that he wears for making sure that the lift has been put into the budget. In my opinion, that demonstrates that this council is interested in that people can have access to this chamber. On the second point, I'd just like to make sure that when you're deliberating the bathroom budgets, that you ensure that there's enough room in those bathrooms coming up, that there's room for parents to bring their strollers and be able to turn them around, and to have a baby change table in those rooms, as well as to be able to ensure that the number of people using washrooms that have mobility chairs that are electric can do that in comfort, as well as higher toilets for those people who need them because of hips. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you for that piece in the budget.
Thank you, Ms. Deutscher. We appreciate those observations. And there will be a full report coming back to us on washrooms. Other comments from members of the public on this evening's proposed 5-year financial plan bylaw? Anyone? Okay, thank you to those that have presented and for attending the meetings and giving some comment and feedback. So I'd like to turn this back to members of council now. We are sitting at a point now where we could consider third reading of the bylaw. As you know from our corporate officer, there is a process whereby we would need to pass this as well as the tax rate bylaw, and all needs to be adopted by a certain date in May 15th, I believe. As well as the sewer tax bylaw. So, seeing no opposition, I'd be looking for someone to move third reading. Move third reading by Councillor Loggins. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Reay. Okay. Any discussion on passing third reading? Comments, questions, concerns? Councillor Casper?
Yeah, I just have one comment, and at our last meeting, I voted against first and second reading. I gave my reasons. I'm not going to support third reading on the basis that this budget contains anywhere between 6 and 9 new positions to be filled this coming year, and I feel that leads to a potential burden on the taxpayers in future years. It's anticipated that in 2019 we may see an additional 4 positions. So if you add it up, it could range anywhere between 10 and 13 future positions. So I think that more money, I think, as far as the public is concerned, is not to increase staff, but to actually put more money into infrastructure like sidewalks and those types of things that has been touted by this and past councils for a number of years. I'll leave my comments at that.
Thank you, Councillor Casper. Other members of council? Councillor Pearson and Loggins?
Thank you, and through the chair to the Director of Finance, and I know you've worked hard, and there's been lots of robust discussions around different things, and we have ideas. And last meeting, and I apologize to the chief for you not being here, and there's a lot of passion, and when it comes to spending a lot of money, I think our job is to have those discussions, and I hope that it stayed on the side of respectful from my point of view. If it didn't, I apologize for my comments, that if they were out of line for your point of view. But we're talking about, somewhere in the neighborhood of about $2.7 million in the 4 years after this year. So my concerns were around that. I think the 2018 budget was a given for me, and I made those statements the other night. So there's no disrespect to the good workings of our fire department and our chief or our financial people. I think that our due diligence around the table sometimes becomes that what we need to talk about, and maybe we get passionate about what we believe in. So I will be supporting the budget because I think that what's going to be very clear to me is that going forward in 2019 and 2020 and 2021 is a real look at everything we do in the budget. We're a growing community. We have immense pressure. But what I have heard is we need more discussion, and I think that it's tough to be sitting here and looking at increases in finances and increases in spending, yet we've held the line pretty good over the last number of years. But we do have to we borrowed money a couple of years ago to get roads and sidewalks done, as Councillor Casper said. We didn't spend any of that money. And that's what people are looking for in our community. So anyways, I'll be supporting the budget.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Councillor Loggins?
Thank you. I think there were only a couple positions that were added that we didn't previously approve, so it was a bit alarming to hear 6 to 8 of them were new. I don't think that's true. We also can't have our infrastructure without planning staff, so I'm glad that we are staffing the way we are. I'm happy to see that Council has worked pretty hard to bring the budget down from 5.5% in the previous plan to where it sits now, just above inflation, so I'll be supporting the budget.
Other comments from members of Council? Councillor Parkinson?
Through your worship, I tend to agree that we need to have more discussions with the public when we do our budget. In previous years, we have had setups upstairs here in the council chambers for the public to come and ask all their questions. I think that it's totally unfair to say that we have 6 meetings and we pick certain sections, and not everybody can come to those meetings. Our council doesn't come to all the meetings, so you can't expect the public to come as well. And I think it's very difficult for them to have the questions answered that they want. I believe that should be changed for next time, regardless of who's here, but the public should have the opportunity to speak as long as they want and to ask all the questions that they want. I just want to confirm that no matter, so when we look at our budget, and the reason why I agreed was because staff has to come forward for anything that's over $25,000. So that means that from now on, that when there are budgeted items that are a huge expense, we have the chance then to say whether we want to go forward with them at that time, or if there's something better coming along, or if we found something else. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we are spending that money. So for me, that is a positive. Thank you.
Other members of Council? Okay, I would just like to add that there is always room to improve public engagement. There's ideas that I have, I'm sure other members of Council have, certainly hear what members of the public have. But we need everyone to participate, and by this I mean members of Council. We didn't have a quorum for one special meeting to deal with grant applications. We have gone into meetings just with quorum. And so if there's an open house with 2 members of Council, staff, and not the rest of Council, then yeah, we have a problem, because it's only the people attending that are receiving the benefit of that view or having that particular conversation with that member of the public. So I think it's an ongoing work in progress, but it's participation that's required from everyone. I think everyone at this table has discussions about taxes, roads, infrastructures, and the like as they go about their day-to-day work. As being a councillor, whether you're going about, any time I'm in the grocery store, I'll hear about a road or a concern that somewhere has. I'm sure everybody has that. We all live here, we all pay taxes, we're members, some of us are on Facebook, some of us aren't, but use different social media. You're continually, members of your family, extended family, friends and the like, will always comment on areas that need improvement within our town. So it's not just confined to what happens here, but at the end of the day, it's what people can actually afford. And we know that everyone is stressed on what they can afford. And that's why I think tremendous effort has been put forward by our staff into having an appropriate tax increase put in. At the same time, significant demands are on our municipality. We hear of downloading coming from other tiers of government all the time, and our staffing resources are stretched. Our fire department is stretched. Our equipment is stretched. Our staff are doing their utmost to keep everything going. So I think they've done tremendous work. In the past, we've contracted out. We've hired outside engineering firms to do projects for us. Now we have that technical expertise in-house, and I think they're doing an incredible job. These are all people that live and work here, that enjoy their downtime here, and that are doing their best. So I think that incredible input has been put into this plan, and I think there is always room for improvement, of course, in engaging with the public. At the same time, we need the public to attend, and we also need councillors to attend. And then maybe we'll get somewhere. So I've put it out looking for ideas from members of public, and at the end, maybe it's what the mayor thinks is best. I'm not saying it's best, but it's just in the absence of having other ideas, you're trying to do something. which is better because it's a big improvement over nothing at all. So I think bit by bit we'll get there. Sometimes I think it's the time of day, but I don't know how many balloons or billboards or flags we need to have, or coffee or sweets or whatever to draw people in. Maybe the best time to do it is whenever there's a disastrous event that might impact our community, and you have everyone here on emergency preparedness. We'll tag on to your open houses in the chief because you tend to draw a crowd, and we'll stay. However, that also means people need to be willing to stay past a certain point of day. So I'm always looking for, of course, I'll accept any criticism. Ideas and solutions are always welcome, as they always are. So I'd like to thank council. I think we went through a long series of meetings. I know everyone made the best that they could of their schedule to be here and to just punch through the material as succinctly and as best as we can. I think everyone did a tremendous job asking those questions and getting clarity. I really, truly like to recognize Mr. Blackhall and the managers, Mr. Howitt, Chief Mount, our corporate assistants that have been here, and all the staff that work under you in your departments that are putting together the reports. I know there's phenomenal talent in this building, and I'm just very honored and privileged to be a part of it. So on that note, I'd like to call the question on third reading. All those in favor of third reading? Opposed? Councillor Casper and Councillor Berger are opposed. The motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so moving on, reports for information. We have resolved with the RCMP update. As you've all heard, there was an opportunity to connect with the staff sergeant on their priorities or to get more details on that. I recommend that you do that. Section 9, we have correspondence to receive. So we have correspondence from March the 16th to the 20th. Move receipt by Councillor Reay. Is there something that anyone would like to pull? Okay, Councillor Casper, then Parkinson.
Yes, actually, there's 4 separate items.
Can you just direct me to the page number, Councillor Casper, of the sheet that has them all listed?
Is it 58?
Sir, 17. Okay.
17.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Casper.
So the top one is that letter from the CRD.
The STEP Code program, okay.
And the one that would, or the 2 others that would be in sync with that or connected would be the Victoria Residential Builders Association, and also...
Which date? Okay, that's March 23rd.
Yes, that's right. And then I think there was another group there.
On the STEP Code?
Yeah, on the STEP Code, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe... yes, there was the Victoria Residential. Yes, there was the Victoria Residential Builders, and
I think there's March 9th.
Yes,
would be the other one.
Yes, that's the other one. And then the last one is the letter from Richard Jones, and it's in regard to
senior driving.
Yes.
Okay.
And I was I don't want to make any motions on the fly, but I think that it's an item that I would like to see brought forward to get a letter of support from council. And just to let you know that the seniors organization that I am there to liaise with on Wednesday's meeting, there's going to be a presentation on this matter, so there may be some additional information coming from that group to council, so I'd appreciate that, so thank you.
Those were the 4 items? Okay, so we'll deal with the first one, and then I'll see if there's others to pull, but we'll maybe deal with the 3 ones on the STEP Code together. Is that okay? And then we'll deal with the second one would be the senior driving. I have an update on that. Was there any others to pull? Councillor Parkinson?
So the one with the...
microphone?
Through you, Your Worship. So I had 58 was the one that I asked to be pulled as well. Page 59 on the...
What's the date of the correspondence?
March 20th.
From Ms. Fisher on open burning? Okay.
Yes. And page 91 is April 5th.
We don't...
April 5th, that pertains to the one on page 58 for the driving. It's a reply from the government on that one.
Okay.
So I think that goes with the first one with Rick Jones. because
Okay.
it's a reply to his. And
Okay,
then
we'll
the
do those
last
together.
the last one was page 105, which is April 5th as well.
I don't have,
And it was a letter from a gentleman about growing community and what there is for children to do here and stuff like that. You don't have that one?
what is the name of the sender?
Scott Lowry.
Okay, yeah, it's just the receive date is March 26th, so that's
Oh,
the
okay.
one that's titled
Oh, down
About
there.
Soup.
Okay, I just looked up top, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Okay, anything others from anyone? Okay, so perhaps if I could amend, or have the motion so that it's a motion to receive all other correspondence. Okay, by Councillor Reay. Is there a seconder for
Second.
that? Seconded by Councillor Loggins. Anything further on the block remaining on what we didn't pull? All those in favor of receipt? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay, so let's go back. We've received the ones, and we also heard from a member of the public today about the step code. I'll turn to Councillor Casper on this.
Yeah, I would just hope that, and I'm not trying to get a make-work project for staff at this time, but I think before any staff report is generated that we get all of the background information from the province and the recommended steps that municipalities should take as far as the consultation process is concerned, because there's been none of that has taken place in the District of Sauk. And I think there has to be some other detailed information that perhaps should be more readily available to the public and staff, because by default alone, right now, we already are in step one, just by the building code requirements. And if somebody goes on to do other improvements on a home, then they may naturally go to step 2 or 3 on their own accord. One of the things that I've read up on is that there's a lack of adequate training on the municipality side as to the ability to actually do the inspections for the different types of green measures, like the build green, for example. You actually have to go through a certification process in order to inspect and approve that. So I don't know whether or not our staff have done that or not, but I think people have to understand that there's a wide range of things that the public is actually doing on their own accord, and a lot of this is consumer driven. There's a huge debate within the construction industry as to the costs associated with the implementation of the full 5 steps or even the mid-range, and what the province has estimated the cost. So naturally the province is saying that it's lower, and the industry out there that are actually doing the work and hiring the people and paying the cost are saying that it's substantially higher. So, I think that before any report happens, that we get a full round discussion and consult with those in the industry. So that's all I'm asking.
So perhaps, would this fit under the mandate of our new committee, perhaps? Maybe just like a discussion item to have at that level at some point? Is that something you'd be comfortable with as chair, Councillor Berger?
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't, the terms of reference are to look at our in-house policies, but
right.
The STEP code isn't a requirement of the BC Building Act or the BC Building Code. It's more a volunteer program, but it's definitely something that I'm sure that our developers and local builders and local community would love to dive into and have a discussion, so sure.
Yeah, I think just at some point, and then now I'm adding to your terms of reference, but just given that it's coming around a few times, just any sort of input, feedback that might come from your committee over time, and then of course to get staff, some staff input at some point as well.
Yes, Your Worship. I'd just like to add, the Chief and I are attending the Risk Management Conference this week.
Okay.
That's MIA's Risk Management Conference, and there is a number of sessions that are dealing with this and other building code changes and bylaw issues, of course.
So we'll look to having more conversations about that in the future. Okay. Thank you. So then a motion to receive these items of correspondence then? Moved by Councillor Reay and seconded by Councillor Berger. Any further discussion on the correspondence by anyone? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay, the next one, Councillor Casper, I'll turn back to you, is on the senior driving.
Yes, there actually is another Jones in the community who's making a presentation at the seniors organization on Wednesday, and the comments and the concerns are of a similar nature, and I think that with our aging community and with the increase in the demographics of those who are 65 and over, especially reaching the age of 80, that it is proving to be a very cumbersome process for individuals who may be forced to take a test to actually go into the Victoria area to do so. So I would just hope that something could be dealt with once we get some more information or requests.
Okay, so with the age-friendly community or committee that you're liaison to, are you expecting that they would present their findings to council at an upcoming date, or would you just report back to us?
Well, if I may, and I'm there as a liaison, it would be my suggestion, if council wishes, that if they do want to pursue this further based on what happens on Wednesday, that they're open to make a request to council.
Okay, I think that's important. I've received a lot of feedback from residents, many who don't drive really outside of Victoria that are now forced to drive in. So one thought that I had was to write a letter to the applicable ministry requesting that they send an instructor to Souk once every 2 weeks so that they can do the testing within our community, and they should send the instructor here. I don't know if that's...
They used to have it here.
Yeah, I mean, there's one center, and I think likely with the growth, they should also push for a second center to be located, say, in the West Shore, but to a satellite location to be in the West Shore, but that they should send an instructor out to Souk. So would council support myself writing that sort of a letter, that we make that request? Okay, so I'll add that to the list. Councillor Casper?
Yeah, I think that if it comes to that, a little more detail should be forthcoming in order to give you some additional information.
Yeah, so I'll wait until, but I would encourage the age-friendly group to present to us and then to provide a bit more context. I'm going just on the calls that I've received, so I think that would be what we should work towards, and perhaps we can talk more to our local colleagues at the upcoming island conference as well to hear what they're experiencing.
I will convey that message on Wednesday.
Okay, so a motion to receive this correspondence from March the 18th. Motion to receive by Councillor Reay and seconded by Councillor Casper. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, so that I'll turn to Councillor Parkinson on the letter from Ms. Fisher on March the 20th regarding open burning.
Through you, Your Worship, there have been a lot of complaints once again about fires, and so I would like to bring back the bylaw for open burns, please, for a discussion.
Okay, so the motion is that the bylaw on burning or open burning be brought forward to council for future discussion. Is there a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Pearson. So this is just sort of a notice that we'll have this conversation at an upcoming date. Okay. Mr. Blackhall?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted council to know that we do have it on our list of other items. We're hoping to check off the list. That one's on there. The chief and I have discussed it, and the burning bylaw is definitely coming forward.
Bring it to the front.
Okay, so I think this might move it up your list a bit with the motion, should it pass. Okay. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Number 4, the About Souk email from...
Right. This one was, through Your Worship, this one was from a gentleman. I'm not entirely sure what he's actually asking for the Children for Souk, but he was talking about, that the skateboard park was gone and different things. But when I look around, we do have a great list of items for children to use, like the bike park, the skate park, sea park, arena, golf course, sports fields, yada, yada, yada. Anyhow, I think that we should write a reply to this gentleman.
Okay, no, I agree, because this skate park may have been closed for some repairs by Sea Park, and it certainly is on their list for a capital replacement in the years to come, but it hasn't left, it's still there, contiguous to the bike park, so I think that makes sense. So so the motion would be that we reply back, just highlighting some of the elements in SUC available for youth. By Councillor Parkinson. Is there a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Pearson. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Maybe I'll check in with you, Councillor Berger, on all things youth-related at your convenience, please. Okay. Okay, I think that takes us through all of this block of correspondence, so I'd like to move on to the next pieces, which is to deal with the speculation tax.
Your Worship, we probably should receive that correspondence.
Oh, pardon me, yes.
So I'll move receipt.
And also motion to receive by Councillor Reay, seconded by Councillor Loggins. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, so within the materials here, you'll see that we have received a number of correspondence on the speculation tax. This is something that's new to our municipality that was just announced. Of course, I'm receiving a lot of queries about it, and found myself a bit sometimes confused as to when it applies and when it doesn't apply, and to whom and how and whatever. We know that different municipalities have requested to be exempt from the tax, Parksville, Qualicum area most recently. And of course, we heard from a speaker earlier today. And so as I look at this, I have a fact sheet that came from the province. This is part of the built into the province's plan to address the housing crisis. It's just when I look at this, with the implementation, the focus is on urban centers, and with the largest urban centers facing the housing affordability crisis, with low vacancy rates, severe affordability, where home prices drastically exceed local incomes. And so for us here, we're sort of lumped into this because we're part of the Capital Regional District. In some ways, though, I disagree with us being an urban center facing this crisis, although we've had delegations here where some have spoken to us that their workers don't have a place to live. So that's where I wanted to bring this to council so that we could have a conversation about it and then decide on what we're going to do. You've received some correspondence already on how it's impacting some residents that may be here part-time throughout the year with the intent of being here full-time, and I think that's, for many of us, that's how Souk is. You visit here as a tourist, you love the place, you start to extend your stays and your visit, and you find a way to gradually be here and eventually retire here. For anyone watching or in the room, you do know that when you retire here, you're expected to volunteer and contribute here. It sort of goes together when you have time. So, just saying, there'll be lots of work to do. So, Councillor Parkinson, then Loggins, please.
I would like to move that the District of Souk respectfully request that the Province of British Columbia grant the district an exemption from the proposed speculation tax.
Second.
Okay, so the motion is that we request an exemption. Now, this is the part where why should we be exempted? So part of it was the urban center, like why versus why not, right? Because that'll be the pushback in that the province is saying they are doing this to address affordability. We're saying we have an affordability issue. So how? Like, that's what I'm looking for here, and that's why I'm glad we're discussing this. So I'll go to Parkinson, then Loggins, or Pearson was the seconder, then Loggins, then Berger.
So for me, I think that we should be exempt in that the area totally surrounding us has been exempt from it already, the CRD. They're exempt.
The Wanda Fuca part, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So, which surrounds us, and they're exempt from it. I also believe that people should have the right to have two homes should they wish, and they should not have to be renting it out to someone if they don't desire to do that. I have numerous friends who have been having problems with the rental properties, and I don't think that we should impose that on someone if that's not what they wish to do with it.
Councillor Pearson?
Well, Yes, my thoughts are almost exactly the same as Councillor Parkinson's. This does really very little that I can see to increase affordability. People who are moving here in a retirement mode or vacation mode, being forced to rent out to get the exemption means that they've decreased, and it's 6 months. That means they've decreased all of their weekend availability for 26 weeks of the year. If they want to come on weekends to spend their weekends here, there's a large percentage of people who are buying in properties where that will be affected that have a no rental agreement. There are several of our condominiums in our area that have that. So it's not really addressing the problem, the lower end of affordability. If you read the report from Kelowna as a city, they've been in a recession basically from 2008 to 2016, and their investment has recently restarted in the areas of rental. The supply and demand for rental apartments is now in process. It's going to take several cycles of construction. Langford's embarking on that right now. Several of the large projects in Langford are addressing rental, and they're lower end rental apartments, and Kelowna's the same. So to me, it doesn't fit us. We're surrounded by the Wanafuk electoral area that's exempt. We're very much similar to that. We have a lot of properties within our boundaries that match the same exact criteria. So for me, I respectfully request that we ask for the exemption.
Okay, Councillor Loggins, then Berger.
Thank you. I struggle with this one because I can see where people are coming from. However, it is extremely clear in the Ministry of Finance report that 99% of BC residents will be exempt from the speculation tax. To me, that says that we're here fighting for the 1%, and I am not here to fight for the 1%. We are in a housing crisis, and we do have to make accommodations for that. It's not something we can just forget about and push to the back burner, and the province does need to do something very drastic about it, and it will hurt that 1%, but it will be beneficial for the 99. Another thing for us to consider, as Councillor Pearson alluded to, is that there are some cities that own rental properties, and it would be wonderful to see the District of Sault one day own rental properties that would subsidize, put funding back into our budget. We could do the same for our Parks Department, putting events on and renting out our parks in ways that would fund our Parks Department. Right now, we don't have that income coming in. So it does put us in a bit of a tougher position, especially when we're relying on income from this 1%. But unfortunately, I'm not here to represent them, and I cannot support this motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Berger. Then Reay.
Yes, thank you. I support Sault being exempt from the speculation tax. In reading up on it, it appears to me that the tax is acting more like a vacant home tax, and I don't think that Sault has a vacant home problem. Rather than its intended purpose of trying to address speculation in the marketplace. In reading through the fact sheet that we got from the province, almost every single paragraph states that, and I'll read just the first one, and it repeats itself all the way through, urban centres throughout the province are in a housing crisis. That speaks volumes. It has that one sentence in everything. We're not an urban centre. We have one of the lowest median house cost in the CRD, so it doesn't make sense that we're a part of it. Everyone around us is exempt from it. When we look at what the province states, and then they exempted Squamish right off the get-go, and yet on the news the Squamish mayor is fighting to be included into it, it just doesn't make sense to me where we don't have a vacant home problem. We have a problem with not enough vacancy for rental, but we don't have a vacant home problem, and I think that's what the speculation piece is. So I don't think we should be a part of it.
Councillor Reay.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'll be supporting the motion. I believe that with the $400,000 threshold here in Sault, that would really affect a lot of our seniors who have spent their lives working, being thrifty, planning for retirement. I think that they in Sault will be the target. Many seniors take time to leave the cold. And for some seniors here in Souk, it does get cold here and winter in other places. And it's not to say they have a $600,000 home. Many of our seniors who winter in the south live in more moderate accommodations, trailer parks, something that they can afford. With a $400,000 threshold, to ask my neighbors to rent their house out so that they can go somewhere warm, I think is inappropriate and is not fair to the seniors that are coming to our community, retiring, or even those that have been here for some time. So I don't believe that this is good for the community of Souk, so I'll be supporting the recommendation.
Okay, thank you, councillors. For myself, the other part that I look at this is this is the Ministry of Finance tax information sheet. So it just came out, and that's where I was looking at, does Souk apply and what doesn't? Because when I read this, it looks like we don't, but then we do, because we're part of the CRD. And I think there's a lot of benefits to being part of the CRD, but on the other hand, areas in our community don't receive water because that's a CRD decision not to supply it because they deem us to be rural. In here it says that who doesn't pay the tax, people whose home and cottages are outside the designated urban center. We're not an urban center, that's in the core. We have a rural urban feel to us, but our center is still well under development. So in that case, I feel that we don't. I think rather than using Kelowna as an example, I tend to look to Parksville and Qualicum, who are communities that were successful in being exempted because they are away from an urban center. They are a destination. They do have people that transition and live there randomly throughout the year, and those people contribute to the overall economy. And then we are a tourist destination. We have people that like to be here from other parts of the country when it's minus 30. Souk's minus 5 that we had is attractive, and it is right now. Calgary has 3 feet of snow, and we have rain and daffodils and the like. So we're an attractive place to be for those reasons. The climate makes a big difference. The other point that for affordability, when we look at who in our community is struggling with affordability, should these homes turn into short-term rentals, they would be expensive for the workforce or people that are in need of housing to afford. This would be market housing, market rental housing going on the market, going for whatever the homeowner wishes to do. So that's where I think it's highlighting examples like us always supporting, or not always, but we have, I think to date, have supported every purpose-built rental that has come into our town. Hope Center, Knox Vision, Habitat for Humanity, Air Manor projects, and then always looking for more. In terms of addressing the affordability crisis within our town, it has to be purpose-built rental with a nonprofit. I don't know how market housing is going to address that because it's what market is. There's also the other place where we talk about people that are at homeless or at risk of, there is a need for specialized housing, supportive housing to be needed, and we are only now going to be able to advocate for that because we participated in the federal program. That's where we can advocate. This wouldn't provide accommodation to those that desperately need it at this time. You should know that we don't even have an extreme out of rain emergency shelter in this time. So there's that demographic that I think is where we need to focus our energy on and to look for that. So in that case, just as I read this and with the comments that I hear, I agree with Councillor Loggins as well, but I also see the perspective where people do. Souk is an attractive place to visit and to eventually retire. And when you see who volunteers, I was at a fine arts show gathering 2 years ago, over 3/4 of the volunteers there are newly landed into our community, newly retired and landed in shows here that are volunteering in one of our most spectacular art shows. So this is the challenge that we face. We're a volunteer-driven community, and we need people continually to come here. So I agree that we should request to be exempted, but I would just really encourage you to look at the model that Parksville and Qualicum have put forward. Councillor Reay?
Yes, Your Worship. Just a friendly amendment that it might be best to read, request an exemption for the District of Souk from the speculation tax, because the motion doesn't identify the District of Souk.
Right. Okay. Was that the intent of the motion for the mover and seconder?
The motion was...
Microphone.
The motion was that I moved that the District of Sauk respectfully requests that the Province of British Columbia grant the district an exemption from the proposed speculation tax.
Proposed.
Okay. Request an exemption for the District of Sauk from the speculation tax. Is that it?
That the District of Sauk respectfully requests that the Province of British Columbia grant the district
Now we're all staring while she's typing.
grant the district an exemption from the from the proposed speculation tax.
Yes.
Okay.
That's it. That was my motion.
And that's what I said.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Casper on the motion?
Yeah, I would hope that if a letter does go out, that it actually states some reasons why.
Yes.
And that we're not an urban center. We're surrounded by a rural area that has been deemed exempt. There's a whole host of reasons. I've mixed emotions about supporting it, but I will support the motion. Just from my own personal knowledge, my son moved to Langford, bought a condominium there because he couldn't find anything in Sauk affordable. He has 5 other friends that have either bought in Langford or have moved and rented in Langford because there's nothing available in Sauk for them. And that's a very sad comment on our community. I cannot help but say time and time again that in many respects we can be our own worst enemy on providing affordable housing. And I've talked about reducing red tape, reducing regulatory burden, streamlining the system, trying to do things that will actually provide greater opportunities for those who build the houses. I don't care if they're doing it for non-profit, rental for profit, or building a home or anything to accommodate a place to live. That's not the issue. The issue is that we have to also do our part in making sure that it is affordable here. And the sooner we can think about that, I think the better. I don't think that our particular position here is going to solve all the problems in the world. I'm sorry to see that the threshold is very, very low, for the exemption. To me, that truly doesn't reflect some of the economic realities of the cost of any form of housing within the capital region. I think people would thank their lucky stars if they could buy a house for $400,000 in Sauk right now. I know you can't do it in Langford, and that exemption threshold perhaps is a little low. Okay, thanks.
No, thank you for that, Councillor Casper. I totally appreciate where you're coming from there, just because No, I agree with you there. It's just, and that's where I wanted to hear specific reasons. We can't just say exempt us. We need to put in some real substantive reasons as to why. And I think the big one is the rural nature, our distance from core services. We have challenges even with bus service at the moment. We're not an urban center. We don't have what's located in core municipalities. And the Juan de Fuca surrounds us completely. We talked about being the lowest median costs, and also added some other comments. Internally examining processes to find ways to reduce costs that would be forwarded to a homeowner. There's a number of things. So I think that we should put in and outline why. Okay. But I do feel that we do have we do need to at some point focus on affordable housing. It's just the question is, who are we trying to help get into house, and how can that be? And I think that's where some answers might come through our development committee. We may pick up some more at other conferences. We're certainly hearing ideas on tiny homes and the like from members of the public, but also looking at supportive care for those that do need it and purpose-built rental. Anyway, I've said enough. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Loggins is opposed. Motion's carried. Pardon me? Mr. Blackhall?
Thank you, Your Worship. If we can, I would like possibly to add to the letter when it goes out explaining that we have, from a staff perspective, a very significant concern regarding the information they want us to collect, which is social insurance numbers on the homeowner grants. And we are nowhere near capable of storing that sensitive information.
No, so I don't know when. I've alerted Mr. Blackhall to this. Just that another change that was highlighted in the budget was that in an attempt to, I think, close the fraud loop through income tax reporting, the province would like the social insurance numbers collected as part to claim the homeowner grant. And so anyone that has dealt with social insurance numbers, the safekeeping of that information is essential. So with the homeowner grant, everyone would immediately have your social insurance number and your home address as two very vital pieces of information. And so we haven't quite had an answer yet. I've raised it at the CRD board. Mr. Blackhall and I have made some contact out. We've reached out to the UBCM because how that information will be kept, stored, logged, all of that. So I think it's almost a separate letter. And where it's like, just wait a second. Like right now, our practice of collecting things and putting them into an inbox just isn't going to make the cut for that, or even software online access. This is a potential for extraordinary downloading onto us, and maybe that just hasn't been caught yet. So just as that came up, if everyone's agreeable to a second letter outlining our concerns about that, because they're two separate matters. I'd like a motion because I think it's important we talked about it. By Councillor Loggins and seconded by Councillor Reay. All those in favor, opposed, and that way there's two for different things. Thank you. Okay, so on that note, just mindful of the time, council verbal reports. Does anyone have anything at this moment in time to share? I think that you may have all known that the Ministry of Transportation have found a error or a problem with the bus stops that were being built, so they're all being rebuilt now. What? Yes, you may notice on the drive out that they are being broken apart actually, and that's nothing to do with us, okay? That's a provincial responsibility that is being addressed as we go ahead. So, Councillor Loggins?
I was made aware that one of the ones that hasn't been torn up yet, hopefully it will be soon, it has a hydro pole right through the ramp, the access ramp. Is it possible for us to alert them to that as well, that that's unacceptable, and that we can have that one redesigned so that it doesn't go through a pole?
So with that though, and I heard about that and I saw it, is sometimes it's having the utility come out. So there will be a plan for hydro to move the pole. Sometimes they just don't line up. A lot of our province is still in bad weather, so hydro is going to be dealing with power outages, restoration, all that sort of stuff, and then eventually they would come and relocate the pole. They would have to put another one in, move the transformers and the wires. And so even in my day job once, it was the case where, it took a year and a half to get hydro to do something that was precariously close to a building, and it just takes time. Our staff know about it, it's flagged, and it was never the intent that it would be there forever. It's just when you see it, I get it, but it's just having the crew come out when they're supposed to. The Ministry of Transportation is scheduling an open house. I believe it's for May the 14th, 15th?
Your Worship, those two dates are thrown around. I haven't had it confirmed yet.
Okay, it hasn't been confirmed, and this is where they're going to look at unveiling what their plans are for Highway 14, but we're expecting to have that date confirmed. You can ask them about the bus stops then. Okay. So we also have a notice of motion come forward, and this is from Councillor Parkinson on March the 27th, and that is that the District of Sault post an employment opportunity for a Deputy Director of Finance. So that's been moved. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Pearson. I believe this position is identified in the budget, so once the budget has been fully adopted and the bylaws passed, then the posting would go out. But Councillor Parkinson.
So the reason for the motion, too, is that the deputy position hasn't been filled since Brent stepped up to take over as the Director of Finance. So the position has been empty for like 2 years. Longer. 2 years? Yeah. So that is why it should be filled now.
Mr. Blackhall, given your responsibilities, you're dealing with the auditing team and everything else. Do you have time to look at doing the posting now ahead of the budget? I also want to be mindful of what works with your department.
Thank you, Your Worship. If council would like it posted, it can be posted as soon. We've got the job descriptions already. 2 different versions we've gone through. So, and then I obviously would set it up so the start date would be a date that works. Not too late, but not right now. So.
Okay. All right. Councillor Pearson?
No.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Loggins. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone.